Let's get started. As you can see, I have a long name. It's a mouthful for most people. I go by the name Hari. I'm a general manager in the application server group at Microsoft, responsible for core, middleware, and platform technologies and services. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon and at this event because we're actually making a few key announcements with respect to App Fabric, our offering in the middleware and application platform space. I'm really glad you could join me for this event. I didn't realize there's going to be such a large audience caring about middleware. It's really what runs our planet, but it's great to have you here. How many of you are IT pros, for example? I'd just like to have a quick show of hands. Okay. And developers or solution architects? Okay, 50-50. All right. Over the next 60 minutes or so, I want to talk to you about key trends in the industry, where we are with middleware platforms. Talk to you about what we are hearing from customers like you, the challenges you're facing, and also how with App Fabric, our offering, we are addressing these challenges. I'll have Karandeep Anand, a program manager in my group, join me here and walk you through some compelling demos to show you the progress we have made so far. Finally, I'd like to leave some time for Q&A so that we can have a good dialogue. And also, I'd like to get some feedback from you on the vision and big bets I'll be sharing with you. Before I talk to you about Microsoft's vision or our bets we are making, I want to just take a step back and paint a picture of where middleware is by and large today. Over the years, as you know, we have had multiple shifts from mainframes to client-server architectures to service-oriented architectures or SOA, and now we are in the midst of another significant shift, namely the cloud platform. The reality is middleware technologies and capabilities are fairly sophisticated, and most of the time these have been offered as point solutions to the individual capabilities you need. Each of these point solutions have pretty much been developed as silos. So they have come up with their own unique ways of solving the problems of development, deployment, management. These have also grown organically to your needs, which means that they've been evolving to all your changing needs, but they've created a different problem, a problem of fragmentation as well as complex architectures. Enter the cloud. Most of us in the industry are now, to try to solve the problem of this complexity and to reduce your costs, we're really adopting this thing called the cloud. And by cloud, I don't mean any particular private or public cloud implementation, but really something called the cloud architecture, which is really something about providing these capabilities based on commodity hardware to bring your costs down. And also something called cloud economics. And when I talk about cloud economics, I'm talking about offering these capabilities as platform services that you should be able to consume based on policies and SLAs. Let me talk to you about what I mean by these policies and SLAs. You should be talking in terms of, these are the kinds of latencies I'm willing to suffer in my app. These are the kinds of transaction I need to be able to have, 10,000 transactions per second or 20,000 transactions per second. You shouldn't have to deal with how many servers should I install, how many instances, roles. To the best of to your ability, you need to be talking in terms of what your business logic is and what you need to be dealing with. What kind of scale you need, what kind of cache size you need for the performance you need. That's really what the cloud economics is all about. When we talk to customers, as they started using the technologies and matured with it, their needs have also changed. To really stay competitive and cutting edge, you really want these development and management costs to be lower, the complexity to be much lower. So you're looking for simpler solutions and consistent solutions. In some ways, what you're looking for is to get this cloud promise we are promising, but really in your premise also. Not just saying, I want it only in the cloud. For example, you would want to maybe take parts of your application, not necessarily move everything wholesale. We are not asking you to just throw all your investments and suddenly come to the cloud to get the benefits. What we are looking for is you can probably move your web front ends and so on to the cloud, make it readily accessible to your customers, and then have that bridge back to your data on your premises or your line of business application on your premises. That's one simple way to get there. Other thing is to use your solutions on premise and use some capabilities that we provide in the cloud in this elastic manner. The other thing you're all dealing with that we hear constantly is that You want to be able to provide these experiences for your customers, your information workers, in terms of a manner that is accessible to them in their own formats, the various mobile devices people have, the tablets they have, or across various clients, be it browsers or custom presentation layers you have. Also, invariably you're not a homogeneous little solution in your enterprises. You want to be able to work across these things and be able to access these from multiple frameworks or languages. The other thing you want to be able to do is not have to have all this pre-provisioned capacity ready for the one day you may need it. You really want to be able to use the cloud as a burst, if you will. There might be certain computations you need to do or certain periods of time you need to do this. As an IT pro, you don't want to just have all this hardware and capacity waiting just for the time when someone needs it. You want to be able to really bridge and use the burst in the cloud. Essentially, you want an off-premises, on-premises kind of hybrid solution in a very consistent manner. That's really what we are hearing from customers. The last thing I want to add is that middleware is no longer this complex add-on you need to tolerate. It needs to be integrated and engineered right from the get-go. So you have these things treated for your application as one unified offering. We hear this consistently when we talk to customers. And we in the industry have to take a serious look at it, and that's what we are doing. Building these N-tier enterprise mission critical applications is really hard. You know it. I mean, you live it day in and day out. Let me just try to illustrate this with a simple application. It has a web front end for displaying inventory and taking auctions, taking bids. And then the back end, you have to do the order processing, checkout, billing, integrating with the inventory systems. And typically you have a database in the back end, which is where you store your customer data, your inventory data, and various other artifacts. You will see this as a typical 3-tier application you're all familiar with. There's a web tier, there's a middle tier, and then you have a data tier. Let's look inside the data. I don't know how it went to the very end. All right, let's try that again. So you see the 3 tiers. I just want to zoom into the middle tier right here. As you can clearly see, there are multiple different capabilities that you need to use. There are web services, there are workflows for the various things that need to happen, all the way from taking the order to fulfilling the order with your payment provider. There is security and identity to securing access to the application. And there are various transforms and messaging that you need to deal with. Each of these pretty much has their own development, deployment, and management models. This is the problem we call the problem of the silos or islands of capability. While there is a lot of work that has been done on the web server area and the database area, the middle tier by and large has left a lot to be desired. We really are going to tackle this problem. Now let me zoom into the middle tier. These are the various capabilities you have, all the way from web services to caches to workflows. Each of these has a unique way in which it's bought, developed, deployed, configured, monitored, managed, and treated all individually. Because you pretty much are buying all of these separately or using different tools and processes to deal with these things, be it caches or web services or messaging or integration systems. Now let me talk to you about just the deployment side of it. You start thinking in terms of what kind of servers do I have, what kind of memory it needs to have, what kind of compute power it needs to have, what kind of disks I need to put on this thing, do I have RAID or not, how do you have the various network secured, what kind of ports to open. Then you think in terms of for the database, do you need to have different characteristics for the data. You then have to have the physical infrastructure all done. Then you install the operating system on top of it, and then you take the application scripts and other setup programs that your developer gives you, and then you try to go and run those things. Some of these are automated, some of these are manual. You need to think in terms of how do you go ahead and run these in a certain order. All of these matter so much. It's just pretty complex. Let's look at just the config and scaling aspects of these things. you are forced to have to think in terms of how do I go and configure my web front end. For example, let's assume that you need to increase capacity for your customers to come and access your application. You increase the front end, web front end, add more capacity there. All of a sudden you find that your messaging system is not able to handle that load. Now you go through a different tool and different process and you increase the capacity on the messaging system. Very soon you find that your data tier is not able to handle that load. And then you're trying to add the cache into the system to try to increase the performance. Each of these you're doing in different panes of glass, different matters. You don't get to manage and configure and scale this application as a unit. You really need to be talking about what do I need for my application and not in terms of what do I need for the front end and the middle tier and so on. Let me talk about the programming models. Each of these, you are learning something new. How do you program to workflows? How do you program to the cache? How do you use the various web services? Do you use REST for some things? Do you use .NET for other things? Do you use a different framework or a language? All of these are multiple different silos. What I just shown you is this island problem. These are the three big problems as we see it, and how we think from a Microsoft point of view how these needs to be addressed. You need to bring these islands together. You need to be able to treat it all as a unified, in a consistent manner. Things like scale, resiliency, management, the experience for development, all of these need to be solved in a unified manner in the platform. You should not leave each of these things to the individual capability that you need. And this is really what we need to do in a very common manner. Again, whether you are deploying the application on the premise or in the cloud, it should be very seamless and consistent. As a developer, you really should not be thinking at development time, is it going to be deployed in the cloud or on the premise? You really need to be able to program to a certain model, and that should just be a deployment topology. It really is something that should be seamless. Now let me talk to you conceptually about, I've talked to you about the problem. I know I painted a picture of doom and gloom. I know you're all wondering, oh my God, this is what I'm dealing with. Maybe you've gotten used to it. I mean, after a while you don't realize it. When things are pretty nasty and so on, you just gotten used to it and so on. And until someone tells you, hey, this is what you're dealing with, this is all the problems you're having, you don't even realize this is the thing that you would rather have in a different way. So let me talk to you about how these silos or these islands of capability really need to be addressed. See, each of those things, I've got these separate things for programming models and management, these things. Those boxes really need to be one. You never need to see these silos. So let's start from a programming model point of view as a developer. What you really need to be doing, as I said, is having consistent frameworks, if you will. There should be a concept of, here is my capability, and I just go and use it. It should be like, here is workflows. There should be n methods you can use. Here is web services, n methods you can use. Here is cache, n methods I can use, whether it's a put, get, or set some properties. It should be as easy for you to discover these capabilities and just use it. Similarly, each of these capabilities that you have should not be n different components, parts of it in this way and parts of it in another manner. You need to have these services kind of available for you from the get-go. Things to do workflows, things to have caches, a container where you run your business logic and user code. All these should just be available for you to just use. You should just be able to say, I want 256 megabytes of cache or 512 megabytes of cache. Not have to worry about, do I take so many megabytes of machines, somehow pull these together and so on. You really need to be able to have these available for you from the get-go. And you should be able to have a way in which you can stitch these together in a very natural and seamless manner. Oftentimes, we have noticed people don't use the technology just because it seems hard to stand up or even program to. Cache is a very common example. Many times people find setting up a distributed cache with all the quorums and so on so that you can have it all available is so hard that even though you would really love to use it to get your low latencies and high performance, this technology is not usually included in your solution. This should not be this hard. Similarly, management. I already talked to you about it. You should not have to go and manage individual capabilities. You should be managing your application. You should be saying what characteristics you need for your application. Like I said, what kind of performance you need, what kind of availability, the 3 nines or 4 nines. You should be talking that language and not in terms of how many servers do I have and what kind of storage I need to put here. Configuration and scaling. Think about configuration for a minute. If I had an ASP.NET talking to a web service, talking to a database, and I need to change my contracts for my service, I want to add different parameters and so on, you can just change it because all of a sudden you're creating ways in which, oh, if you call with this thing, I'll send it to this service. If you call with the other parameters, I'll call to this service. We have come up with all kinds of hokey ways to solve these problems. Really speaking, you should be able to say, I want to deploy a new version of this application. And typically, the platform should be able to maybe take part of your capacity and put your newer web services, your newer ASP.NET pages, and then make sure that as the old code path is getting dehydrated, all the requests start going to the new path, and very soon you're just using the new version of your application. You should not really have to stop your application or in some ways have degradation. That's really what you want to have. Similarly, when we talk in terms of the infrastructure itself, it should be abstracted. You should only be talking in terms of platform capabilities and just use it the way it's supposed to be meant to be used. So at this point, I've really painted the problem for you, the things that you yourself face on a day-to-day basis, and conceptually how we need to be solving this problem. This is a 5-year journey to be at this nirvana, 5 to 7 year, and probably a little longer journey to really be at this ultimate state in terms of all of these available for you in a very seamless fashion. Let me talk to you concretely about what we are doing about it today and how we are working on it over the long term to address these challenges. The solution we have for this is what we call App Fabric. It's our next generation middleware and application platform, built from the ground up with these cloud characteristics in mind. It's one integrated platform, basically for you to be able to address the big 3 problems I called out earlier. Let's start by looking at the 3 tiers that I talked about. Really speaking, it shouldn't be thought of even as a stack where you think in terms of web tier and a middle tier and a database tier. From your application point of view, you should just be able to use these almost like a horizontal thing. You just want to be able to use the data service, the web services, and the middle tier services. It's almost like a thing you just compose. Again, what we have is you want to be thinking of applications as opposed to even these tiers. Now let me talk to you about something we have in App Fabric called the App Fabric container. What it is really a runtime which is built with high density, multi-tenancy, and scale in mind. This is what allows you to run your business logic and your workflows and code at a manner where you don't think about these concepts of scale and configuration, and it does it for you. This is also the technology that actually abstracts physical servers or virtual servers or running on your service on-premise or in the cloud. Let me just zoom into the middle tier a little bit and talk to you about the n different services that we talked about, be it caching, messaging, which is what I have a service bus there, access control, which is your security and identity, integration, and where you run your custom code. Those are your workflows and web services. We have built these services also on the same container, the caching service and the messaging service and so on. That's how we get our own elasticity in terms of scale, deployment, and monitoring. You're already familiar with Visual Studio and the frameworks. What we are doing is enhancing it with our App Fabric developer tools. What it allows you to do is it provides you a simple set of toolbox which gives you all these services for easy access. It allows you to even compose these various services so that you can really create your end-to-end application. It's not just about our services. Even your third-party services can be discovered in a very seamless manner in our model. What we have this thing called the composition model so that we understand the various dependencies of your services within your application. How your web service is talking to the workflow, how the workflow is talking to your database, where is your cache, are you using your cache for your session state, or are you using it for your reference data? All of these are captured as part of this composition model. And we have tooling to enable you to do this. The same tools we use in the composition model will allow you to take the various artifacts you have and the references you have to these various services that are pre-built and you're consuming to create this end-to-end package so that you can hand it over to your IT pro. No longer are you just giving scripts saying, hey, do this for me in the caching layer, do this for me in the database layer, then you have install my app, run the little setup.exe or this MSI. So what you have then is, as an IT pro, you have this App Fabric application manager. You take this package that was handed over to you and use this application manager to deploy your whole application as one. So right in your application, you've said you need this capacity in your database, you want so many queues and so many topics, and kind of the capacity you want, kind of the SLAs you want. It's all part of the package. So all the IT Pro is really doing is taking this package and adding it to this App Fabric service, if you will, the manager service, if you will. And all of these things are provisioned for you, and app is ready to go. The same composition model is how we are able to work across the 3 tiers. Deploy it in your web tier, to the middle tier, and your data tier. And we are using the same composition model to also get health and diagnostics back to the application manager. So that way, we are able to give you a single pane of glass, a view in terms of how your transactions are doing, what kind of latencies you have, how hot is your database, what is your cache performance, what kind of hits you're getting from the cache or not. So that is how we are able to give you a unified application view of the whole thing that you have put together. So bottom line is, what we have with App Fabric is a set of pre-built services for you to consume right out of the bat. We are enhancing your familiar frameworks that you're used to and the Visual Studio experience by providing you App Fabric developer tools to then consume these services and compose that into your end-to-end application. And the App Fabric Manager is the one which actually helps you deploy it as a single unit, and then also gives you your health metrics and forensics so that you're able to manage and monitor and deploy. So let me talk to you about a few of these services, just at a high level. This is an overview slide. There are detailed sessions here. So for example, for the access control that you need in your app, you may want certain people to be able to come and add inventory to your application. You want other people to be able to place orders on this application. So the access control service is how you provide claims-based security. We basically have support for all these federated identities, the well-known Facebooks and Googles and Microsoft's Live, Yahoo. And of course, you can bring your own identity providers as well, including, of course, our own ADFS, which is very powerful and well adopted by you guys. We've had this service in production since early last year, and we've added all these extra capabilities with the production release we just released last month, early in April. Let me talk to you about one other service we just announced about 3 weeks ago for you to use commercially. This is the App Fabric Cache. We have had this service available for you on the server as part of the Windows Server App Fabric since last June. We have now brought this capability to the cloud. So you can very simply come to the cloud and ask for X capacity of cache, change a config entry, for example, in your config store, and right there you can use this and get the full benefits of it. So this is the symmetry we are getting across the service and the cloud and the server. Let me talk to you about one more service that you'll be using in this. For example, to be able to talk to your line of business or something in your premise. Service bus. This allows you basically to have a relay, if you will. We've had the service also since early last year. This allows you to basically provide a namespace in the cloud, if you will, for easy access. And this is the one which actually reflects the web service or something you would have on your premise. So this is a way in which you can provide a namespace in the cloud and be able to go across firewalls and networks, and we provide it very easy for you to be able to consume your on-premise web service through the cloud. We have got support from .NET, we've got REST support here, and we also have WCF. So we want to be able to have you use it across different languages or frameworks. We announced this as a CTP yesterday, and we're very pleased to bring this offering to you. I'd encourage you all to really try it out. Go sign up and take full advantage of this. It's the full messaging stack. We've actually got asynchronous queues, PubSub, very rich messaging, including filters so that you can listen to what you want to listen to. So Service Bus is something that we're very happy to have brought to the market, at least as a CTP, and we expect to bring it to commercial availability later this calendar year. With that, I would like to invite Karandeep on stage to just show you these 3 services in action, if you will. Could you use the mic, please? I'm not able to.
Could I use it to implement an enterprise event bus as well as a service bus?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, the question was, can I use it as an enterprise event bus as opposed to a relay and connectivity service? Absolutely. That's its intent. Karan.
Great. Thank you, Ari. So over the next few minutes, I just want to walk you through some of these services that we've brought to market. And to illustrate that, I'm just going to take a very, very simple ASP.NET MVC3 application and see how we can leverage these pre-built services that Hari just talked about and add a lot of rich capabilities to your app and extend it. So what you're looking at is I'm just running a local dev fabric to simulate a very simple MVC app which talks to a database, reads a few entries from the catalog, and is able to display the results. If you just what I've done is I've built this application. Let me quickly show you that as well. As a Entity Framework 4 app with a bunch of controllers. So I took the liberty to create a few controllers to have for the products, the categories, and interact with that here. So you'll be able to see the products as an administrator. I want to be able to add new products to the catalog, remove them, change them, similarly create new categories. So very simple app, just ASP.NET, talking to a database, using a simple entity framework to be able to model my relationships to the backend data tier. What I want to do is, just walk you through the simple code here, which is one of the typical problems I will have when I put this application out is how do I restrict access so that only administrators can come and update the product catalog, while all other users should be still able to browse my application and buy products. So this is a very, very typical problem. There are different ways to solve it on premises, different ways to solve it in the cloud. And more often than not, it involves setting up an identity system and then managing and configuring one of the systems to be able to provide fine-grained and very rich access control. What we've done is with App Fabric Access Control Service, we've created a STS, a Secure Token Service, as well as a federated identity provider in the cloud. What you're seeing here is the Azure Platform Management Portal. And I've signed up for one existing App Fabric namespace. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through a few simple steps that you would need to do to take the leverage the capabilities of the service and use it in your application. One of the first things you would do is walk up and create a new namespace. So this is going to be my AF demo. Check if it's unique, because it's in the cloud right now. Pick a data center in the world. So you have full global power, and wherever you want to deploy the application, you can pick the location where you want this identity system to be co-located as well. I'll go ahead and pick US South Central. And in this case, I'll also quickly, while I'm buying access control, let me just go buy a couple of other services so my demo can be faster. I'll just go ahead and buy cache. And that goes back to the other point Hari had, which is when I want to buy something like cache, the only intent I'm specifying here is the size of cache. So you can buy one service. In this case, access control. You can buy more than one service. I'm going to go ahead and buy 1 gigabyte of cache as well, because I'm going to use that in my demo too. And all I do is I go ahead and hit create a namespace. A simple intent will go ahead and start configuring an access control system for me to start using in my application. So while this activates, I'm just going to go ahead and show you the rules you would need to typically configure in the ACS corresponding to building this application. So as a simple developer, I really don't want to spend too much time in using either Active Directory or any existing enterprise identity system. But I really want to leverage the power of using Facebook or using Google or using Yahoo IDs. So what I'm going to walk you through is a simple experience where, let me just go ahead, sign me out, sign again. And I'll go ahead and set up a new identity provider for using with, let's say, Yahoo in this case. And you have the options of using any of the identity providers which have OAuth support. We have out-of-box support for multiple of these. And with one click, I was able to bring in the fact that I want to use all of Yahoo's authenticated users into my application, which is specifying the intent. So this is as easy as saying I want to use Yahoo as an identity provider. The next step would involve adding the application which will be consuming Yahoo as the identity provider. In this case, it's my TechEd demo. Specify the app, and say instead of setting the configuration required manually, let me walk you through deploying an app locally. Actually, let me don't even set the URL where my app will be deployed. In this case, I'm just going to run it from a local simulated environment. So I'm just going to specify localhost. You can use localhost or 127. And this is the same URL in which after authentication I want to come back to. And if you look at other configurations, you see how sophisticated this can be. If you really want to use encryption, you want to use other token formats, increase the latency timeouts. So you have a pretty fine-grained control over how you can configure the system. I'm sure you can play with this. But I'm just going to go ahead, take defaults, and hit save. At this point, I've set up the fact that I want to use Yahoo. I've set up the fact that I have an app called My TechEd Demo. And I'm going to specify a rule, because I don't want to restrict my entire application's access. I only want to restrict the admin operations. I'm going to go ahead and create net new rules. By default, Access Control Service generates a bunch of rules for the well-known providers automatically for you. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and pick the default rules for both Live and Yahoo, in which case it just picks email addresses, names as simple identifiers. I'm going to go ahead and add one more rule, which says, for anyone authenticating with Yahoo, I want to allow access, but if someone called Karandeep is logging in, so anyone with, or in this case me, logging in with these credentials should become an administrator. So it's specified a simple rule that says, create anyone, when Karandeep logs in, make sure Karandeep comes in as an admin to my application. Here's where I specify the simple mapping. And what I've done now is the third and the only step required, which is specify the rules with which I want to allow fine-grained access. Other than that, I don't need to do anything else. And all this metadata gets generated for me automatically and available for consumption in this UI, in this endpoint. So now I'm going to switch back real quick to my application where I really want to restrict access. One of the things we've done is to make sure that your programming experience is symmetric between on-premises and cloud. We don't have a separate SDK for Access Control Service. We just use the WIF with the Windows Identity Framework. So if you're familiar with WIF, you can directly program against ACS. So one of the first things I would do is add an STS reference, a reference to the fact that I want to use some endpoint service. In this case, we're going to use Access Control Service. Specify the URL in which the app is going to be running, which is, again, the local host. And this prompts me saying I'm not using HTTPS. It's supposed to be a secure app. And then specify the endpoint that I just selected and created in the cloud. With this, it will automatically pull down all the metadata and configuration required to configure my application with the rules, the identity providers, and the application semantics that I specified on the website. I'll go ahead with defaults for everything else. Don't need to touch anything at all. And at the end of running the simple wizard, what you see is the federation metadata getting added with all this information into the application itself. Now, one of the things that STS would do for you, it will also restrict access to anyone, because it doesn't know which scope of the application you really want to restrict. And it'll go ahead and deny all users. So I'm just going to make sure that not all users get denied. Real quick, let me just show you the web config. Oh, I think I messed up by not loading the. Real quick, open this. OK, so I want to make sure that all users are allowed access. And if I'm going to comment out the fact that I don't want all users to get denied, because this is at the application scope. However, I'm going to go ahead and in my products catalog, where I have the controllers, I'm going to make sure that nobody can come and edit the products itself. This is where I'll stick in the authorize command. And all I'm specifying is if somebody with a roles equal to admin shows up, I want you to go ahead and allow access only for this. So I specify the token that should allow you to run with this credential. I'm going to go ahead, hit F5, and run this application to show you what the behavior change is. So I had an application earlier which required some access control, where all users should be able to access the entire website, but only some users should be able to access the admin operations. So in this case, while when website loads, it will allow me to browse to the home page. So no access control required for this. But as soon as I hit the products, this is where the authentication kicks in, or should have kicked in. I think something is funny with this. OK, I'm going to try this real quick. Yep. Oh, sorry. Let's try this once more again. Demo gods. don't like me today. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm able to open the front page or the main page where everyone is able to browse. However, as soon as I hit the products page, this is when it prompts me that you're not allowed to perform this admin operation and redirects me to a system. In this case, I can use Yahoo or I can use LiveID. I'm going to go ahead and use Yahoo, in which case it will take me to the Yahoo sign-in portal, and I'll log in using my Yahoo credentials. In this case, I don't have to maintain any system. It could have been Facebook. It could have been Google. And I can not, instead of maintaining my own directory, I can get authenticated against these systems which are running in the cloud. So I'm able to quickly secure my application just by using a service in the cloud right now. And it brings in my profiles, so I can get usernames directly from my Yahoo profile as it's displayed there. So we quickly walk through what it takes to secure an application using one of the services. One of the other things I'm going to do is, one of the typical problems that Hari talked about was people often don't end up using caching because it's fairly complex to stand it up. But one of the other things we've done with AppFabric is we've created the AppFabric caching service also as an Azure offering. So you can use cache as a fully built platform service. So for buying cache, all I had to do was specify the amount of cache I need. I don't have to worry about number of servers, how the distribution or the failover or any of the HA would need to get configured. You specify the size of cache you need, and I've got this new namespace, which I just bought my AF demo, created for me. And all I need to do is look at the endpoint, which is the endpoint I need to have to be able to talk to a cache. So I'm going to go back to my application and see how easy it is to start using caching and all the capabilities of offloading all the state, not keep it in a disk store like this, which could be usually slower, but keep it in memory, but keep it in a distributed memory tier as opposed to in the app itself. So for AppFabric caching, if you're using the SDK that's available Windows Server, great. In this case, I'm just going to add a new service, a new SDK. And one of the great packages we've created is we created a NuGet package, so we can shot through a whole bunch of these steps. I'm just going to pull in a NuGet package for AppFabric caching. This is available. If you haven't used NuGet, just try it out. It's a pretty cool way to just get all the SDK, get all the references added. It also will add a bunch of simple config snippets, so you can start using the cache directly from your code. So what it does is, it updates your web.config and adds the data cache client. So this is the section it automatically added for me. And all I have to do is replace the namespace that I got back from the service with the namespace here. So I'm just making a config edit. Oops. OK. I'm going to make a config edit which says, this is the endpoint of cache that I need to use. And of course, because these services are built as multi-tenant services, you also need to specify your access key and token. That's how we make sure that all your systems running in cloud, also on premises, are secure and accessible. This question? I have 2 T's. Oh, thank you. That would definitely not compile. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this key, which is also generated for me from the portal itself. And this essentially uses, again, the access control service to have the token which I would need to talk to my cache. I'll go ahead and replace the token with the token that I get from the website. And that's pretty much all I would need to do to go ahead and start using the caching service. We also provide, I'll just quickly show you this, we also provide for some common use cases and patterns. In this case, it's if you want to use the session state, it's a very, very common scenario where your session state is usually in proc or you keep it in SQL. In SQL or in any disk storage, it's usually slower. You need high performance. You can keep it in memory. And we understand that that's a very commonly used pattern. So what we provide is a simple config snippet that you can take and embed it directly into your application and start using the session state with caching. So I'm going to go ahead, stick this into system.web. In this case, if you just looked at it, I did not even touch the code of the application. All I did was I added 2 code snippets, and it made sure that I can using the session state provider that's available out of the box as caching. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy this application once again. And the first time it fetches the data from the database, and subsequent refreshes happen directly from the cache. And if you generate load, you'll start seeing how quick these refreshes are. In this case, it's actually sub 0 milliseconds. So that's what it takes to include a powerful capability like cache directly into your web roles, and you can keep scaling up your web roles, and it'll always hit the cache before it hits the database after it fetches the data first time. You can extend that to not just use session state, but use the full programming model of get APIs, put APIs as well. We just demonstrated the session state. The last one, real quick, I want to show is this is a more simple app where I'm generating orders. With the service bus capabilities that we announced yesterday, we have a full messaging subsystem running in the cloud dedicated for you. So the way I signed up for caching is the way I would sign up for service bus as well. So I'm not going to walk you through creating a new namespace, but walk you through a simple scenario where I've created a simple phone app. Let me run the phone app. I've created a phone app, and what I want to do in the phone app is get the information about any new order that's getting generated. So you come to the website, you're making orders, and any order which is interesting to me, which in this case is any order more than $10,000, is the order I want to see. So I'm going to simulate creation of orders from that website using a simple console app. And this should give me full points for making the app, the whole demo geeky as well if you have a console app. So I have the console app, I have the web app, and the phone app. And in this case, the order generation is getting simulated. So I'm just going to go ahead, start creating a bunch of these orders to simulate the fact that some people are walking through the product checkout. And once this happens, go ahead. You start seeing that it relays all its information directly via the cloud. And any order which meets a certain specific filtering criteria, which is order greater than 10,000, is the one that I get notified on my application. Now, to generate or to build a system which can do all this, which is I'm running on my laptop, talking to a cloud web application, get notified on my phone, is all the magic is happening using a simple set of service bus APIs that I'll quickly show you here. I have the capability of creating a simple topic. The topic lives in the cloud. My web application, and in this case, the console application, generates these orders, sends it to my messaging system in the cloud, which is fully persisted, durable, so you can actually do business transactions. And then on the phone side, I'm running on this topic a filter that allows me to pick up application orders which are higher than a certain size. And in the end, I know that outside of the 300 orders are total generated, 31 were more than $10,000 and worth waking me up at night using notifications. So you can use a full device-to-device, application-to-application connectivity with this enterprise messaging system running in the cloud with Service Bus. And that's a capability that got announced yesterday. So with that, we had a quick, I call Hari back here. Just want to quickly summarize that we took a simple MVC app that we programmed today, and were able to use out-of-box pre-built capabilities with access control to secure the app, scale up the app using caching, and add a full-blown messaging subsystem and a messaging capability to talk to other payment providers, to my phone, to my other applications, using Service Bus, and all from scratch with that ease. Thank you.
Thank you, Karan. As you can see, he took an existing application you had and just was able to easily consume these three services. As a developer, it was so easy to just put a few tokens, and I know he had to do the admin on the other one. That's why even though he was not Karan at yahoo.com, it allowed a general user to go and click on the products and see it. But it was as easy enough as just writing 2 more lines to make sure he secures it. And all of a sudden, the general population only saw the main web page, and people who only came in with those rights, especially in his case, it's only Karan at yahoo.com, got to see the product site. So as developers, you should really feel your life got a lot easier by able to consume such pre-built services. Now let me go back to the same application one more time and talk to you about a few other services. We talked about the first 3, the cache, service bus, and access control. Let me talk about what we are doing for you to write your custom logic and your business code and what App Fabric will do for you. You're already familiar with Visual Studio and the frameworks. WCF is a first-class framework to write web services or service-oriented architectures. And with App Fabric, we are providing a first-class host to develop, run, and manage these services. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things which are new to WCF that we've added. One is the ability to be able to use it across web APIs. As an industry, there are multiple patterns people are going towards through HTTP or RESTful programming models, and with WCF's web API, we are making that easy. We are embracing that in a fundamental way. Through web APIs, you can expose data from different formats in a first-class way, and we have native support for XML, JSON, and OData, and you can extend it and bring in your own data formats if you will. We have support for that. This has been available on Codeplex for some time now, and we've got very good feedback, the WCF web APIs. Let me talk about one other thing with WCF, which is the RIA pattern, the rich internet application pattern. This is where you can have a Silverlight client talking through a domain service, which then talks to a database, which exposes your data in a very easy to consume and manipulate. So with App Fabric, we are providing patterns right out of the box. Instead of just having you to consume or compose different services, you can start off by saying, I want a RIA pattern, and right there you have a template out of the gate for you to be able to plug in your code and just use it. With the App Fabric CTP that's coming out next month, we'll have this capability of using patterns right out of the box. WF, state machine orchestration, has a well understood industry pattern, and it's the #1 requested feature for WF4, for Workflow 4. We've added that support, and App Fabric, the next CTP that we have, has support for it. We also have this available as a .NET product update for you to use. Workflows is typically a nice pattern for running long-running business processes which last hours, weeks, even days. We have now added support for persisting these workflows in the cloud with SQL Azure. App Fabric is also a great host to run your workflows so that you get real high density and multi-tenancy so that we can secure your workflows and run it at pretty low costs. So that's the other support we are providing with the App Fabric container for workflows. So your code that you run, we have a fantastic first-class host in the App Fabric container for both your WCF and WF. So I've talked to you about 4 of those here, and then let me talk about the last piece, if you will, in terms of services, the pre-built services that I'm talking about, which is App Fabric integration. I know when I use the word integration, the first thought that probably comes into your mind is the Microsoft offering BizTalk Server. When you really look at BizTalk Server, there are 3 broad capabilities. One is really a messaging pub/sub engine. 2, a business logic for doing your workflows and services. And 3, capabilities such as adapters, pipelines, message transformations, trading partner management, and so on. 2 of these we've already talked about, namely the service bus, which is where all our messaging infrastructure investments are, and then where you run your business logic, which is the WCF and WF. This is a way in which we are removing duplication and removing these islands of capability, so you consume these in a fundamental way. When you think in terms of integration, we think in terms of enriching and connecting with the existing services that we have. For example, when you think in terms of adapters, pipelines, or message transformations, we see this as a natural existence for bridging to your existing system. This is the last mile of connecting to your existing systems. And with Service Bus, we think it's a very easy way to enhance and build it through that. When you think of trading partner management or business activity monitoring or business rules, we see these capabilities we'll add to the App Fabric platform. And the cloud is a very natural place for us to provide it for you to consume. And also we'll bring the same capabilities back to the server. So I basically talked to you about the pre-built services. Now let me just paint a very short picture for what you as a developer get with App Fabric. Like I said, you're already familiar with Visual Studio, and you know how to use these WCF and WF frameworks. We have enhanced these, and you will be able to, with a rich tool set that we have, you'll be able to build these composite applications and really describe the various relationship between the artifacts and build these applications as one. You will be able to then use the tools to create really a package that you can hand over to your IT pro. This is the end-to-end life cycle that I'm talking about, from where you develop to hand it over to the IT pro. Now once the IT pro gets it, the same package, like I said, should be able to be delivered to the App Fabric application manager to deploy this application, what we call NS1, as opposed to individually installing these capabilities and then installing your app artifacts. The same App Fabric application manager allows you to monitor the health, more than me talking about it, I'll have Karan once again come over and just show you this thing in action, how you will be able to deploy this as one, how you'll be able to see the whole monitoring. And code will do a better job of doing justice to this than my word. A CTP of this App Fabric, these developer tools and the App Fabric application manager and the App Fabric container, which is where you'll be able to run your code, will be available next month. So I'm very pleased to announce that. And we'll be showing you code, which is going to show up in June. Karan.
So all this while, I was using the shipped services and the standard Visual Studio tooling. I want to shift gears a little bit, as Hari mentioned, and talk to you about what's coming next. And for that purpose, I'm going to use some fresh, hot, out-of-the-press bits. These bits are still getting baked, so bear with me in case something does flaky happen here. So with that, what are you looking at right now is your standard Visual Studio tooling. So nothing significantly changed from the way you interact with Visual Studio. And what I've installed to get to this point on top of the standard VS tooling is the App Fabric Developer Tools SDK. So that's on top of the vanilla Visual Studio. You get App Fabric Tools SDK. However, there's nothing different in how you program and use the existing services like Workflow and WCF. As an example, I have the application that Hari's been using all along to explain the auction application built out. So in this case, I have a more built-out application where it has a bunch of web services for doing bid management. It has a website for displaying the web results. It has a workflow. And if you really look at the workflow definition itself, for those of you familiar with programming with workflow, this is what you get today. And you continue programming with workflow in the same way. Similarly, the way you author your WCF services, you continue authoring your WCF services in the same way. Nothing changed here. The one thing that we've added extra here is this deployment project, which gives you a view and a way to be able to model your service and add this extra metadata, what Hari described as composition model. And all that is a way for you to tie in and define that my website, in this case, my auction site, is going to talk to a bunch of services, either hosted by Azure or external. In this case, the payment is an external service. I'm talking to SQL Azure. I'm talking to caching as internal services. And all this tool is allowing you to do is capture that composition model. Of course, there's a lot of other tooling benefits that you get as soon as you define the relationships. It pulls in references, does dependency injection, all that cool benefits as well you get as developer. But the same thing can also be visualized using the designer, which is this is a concise way of looking at all the relationships between the various artifacts in your application. So you know that my website is talking to a service, and it in turn talks to a database, it talks to a cache, and able to quickly visualize your entire application, regardless of whether it runs in web, middle tier, or data tier, or calls external services, all from a logical standpoint. So you get to see the application as logical artifacts as opposed to the physical deployment 3-tier architectures we keep talking about. So that's this tooling with this diagram view and a way to define the composition model on top of existing application is what you get with the App Fabric developer tools. I'm going to go ahead and either, of course, I can go publish from my application directly from Visual Studio, but I'm going to switch back to management portal experience, what the IT pros get for managing these end-tier applications. So what you're looking at here, this is not a release build yet, so you're probably the first ones to see what's coming out next month set of bits. You're seeing the App Fabric Application Manager UI, and for signing up for this service, I've uploaded a bunch of different applications, and the auction app is the one that I built. So I'm going to go drill into this application that I uploaded and been running for a little while. And in one place, you'll notice that I get the same view of the application which my developers used to get, or my solution architects used to get. So the knowledge that your developer and architect had is now translated directly in the IT Pro tooling as well, and the IT Pros also understand how the application's built, what the dependencies are, what the relationships are, and are able to translate that knowledge at runtime for managing the application as well. I'm going to, of course, show you a longer list view, which shows you the various parts of the application. And namely, it breaks it down into 3 key parts. One is It tells you all the code that you're running and you've authored. This is all the containers. Whether the container is your web container or your middle tier container is a detail that you have to deal with, as opposed to having to worry about them as separate solutions. Then it, come back to the other one, it tells you all the external services that you're consuming in your application, so that you can manage how your SQL Azure or your database connections are, connection strings, database passwords. All that can be managed directly here, so you know that you're consuming a database, you're consuming a cache. You're also using the storage service from Azure. You could very well be using PayPal here, and that shows up here as well. And the third section shows us all the endpoints that your application is exposing to the external world for it to consume, including the ASP.NET web page. So I'll just go ahead and quickly show you the application itself, which has been built. So it's a fully built out auction application, which has a web front end. It allows me to sign in. This is the same experience that I had earlier, because it's integrated with Access Control Service. So you can use all Facebook users to come in. I have cache enabled. I'm going to go ahead and enable cache on the application and see how my, for a large application like this, your time for query actually significantly reduces because it caches the data locally. So you can not only see the app here, you can actually manage the entire application back at the application manager as a whole. A couple of other quick things here. You get to see extremely rich monitoring information. Typically, you would have to invest in a whole bunch of scripts and tools to go pull out monitoring events from multiple different machines and servers and roles and collate them. What you get out of the box, as soon as you build the application and deploy it with Application Manager, is the fact that you can start seeing error information. You can start getting a sense of my latencies, not just the latency in my own code, but how my latency across the services that I'm calling. In this case, how long does it take for me to execute my SQL queries? So you get SQL query information, SQL latencies. You get your own .cf calls latency. So how long is my auction service taking to respond to external users? And you can get pretty rich metrics on how it's been trending in the last 1 hour. You can change filters, go to the last 24 hours history, and you can trend this over a period of time, all generated out of the box depending on which parts of the application you built out. The App Manager also is sitting on top of an extensive runtime, so it can help you scale up your application pretty seamlessly. So for example, instead of worrying about how to add more capacity, you all you specify is, I need to scale my application. Today it's running on, with certain characteristics. I'm just going to double the scale count and hit deploy. And this single action actually starts deploying more instances of compute for you on your behalf, so that while your application is running, you're not taking any downtime, but you start scaling it out automatically. And the system takes care of making sure that there are necessary copies, address resolution, the scale failover, and routing all gets taken care of you with a single click of button right here. It gives a fairly rich troubleshooting experience as well. So you can get full-blown logs, as opposed to having to look at n different machines and pull the logs together. You can dynamically dial up, dial down the troubleshooting levels, and get pretty rich logs from your web, from mid-tier, from your data tier. And you can actually look at them in a single pane of glass, which is the Fabric Application Manager. So with that, of course, I want to keep this demo short. We have a full-blown session, and the service is yet to be released. What you just saw was an ability to take your existing developer artifacts, use Fabric developer tools to define their composition model. So you start getting an end-to-end view of your application. Use that to create the application package, to hand it over to the ID pros. And as ID pros, you get a very rich tooling generated for you out of the box for your application to start getting rich metrics, rich information, and N-as-1 control of your entire end-to-end application. So stay tuned for this service release next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Karan. So you've seen not just consuming these services, but also composition of these services and the end-to-end deployment and management. I just want to talk to you about our roadmap, if you will, as how we've been delivering on our promise. Like I said in the very beginning, it's a long journey for us. But I really want to make sure you realize that we are providing significant value in a timely manner, so that you can give us the feedback, we can iterate quickly and provide the right solutions. For example, in early April, we had the second commercial release of Access Control. We also had the cache release in late April, about 3 weeks ago. Both are generally available for commercial consumption. Then, as of yesterday, we have full messaging capability for you to use in the cloud, including the asynchronous queues and pub/sub and topics. And then, as Karan just mentioned and showed you a demo of things that's coming, you have the full AppFabric container to run your custom code. You get the developer tools and the AppFabric application manager. This is coming next month. So please do sign up for it and give us your feedback. And then in the second half, we will take the CTP that you're seeing with Service Bus and make it commercially available. And also integration will start showing up as a CTP in the second half of this calendar year. The whole idea for us is to be able to iterate quickly in the cloud, do about 2 to 3 releases in the cloud as CTPs till we go commercial, if you will. Keep refreshing it. Once you have the regular cadence, you'll be able to see how quickly we can deliver value. Iterate there and make sure we get this down to the server so that you have the same symmetry. This is something that's unique, so you shouldn't have to think about, am I doing it in the cloud or on my server? So overall, I want to show you a compelling roadmap we've had just in this calendar year, and we'll continue this pace. As you can see, there's a CTP2 also we expect to have in the second half of the calendar year of this AppFabric Manager and the dev tools. There's a whole bunch of related content. I just gave you an overview. I know I had to cover a lot, but there is, if you want more detailed, drill down into the exact capabilities of each of these services and how you can get the full benefit of these, there's a whole bunch of services that we have. In fact, Clemens Vasters has one right after this. That's on the Service Bus, the new capabilities, the MID 312. That's, I believe, in C208. There are a whole bunch of hands-on labs and so on. I'll also be available at the booth to take questions from you guys. I'll also be here afterwards, and we have multiple of my team members also here to address any of your detailed questions of anything and everything you've heard here. Summary. I really want you to take away one thing. We are listening to the feedback of the customers. We're iterating quite rapidly, and we're making significant investments so that you can bet on the Microsoft stack. We are on a long journey, but we do intend on providing all these capabilities both in the cloud and on the premise in a uniform and symmetric manner. So this is a huge bet for Microsoft, and we want to make sure you get the full benefits of these as both a developer and IT pro. We're basically bringing all of these together as one integrated platform. BizTalk Server, Windows Server AppFabric, Windows Azure AppFabric is all one unified integrated platform is how we view this. Thank you. With that, I'll open the floor for a few questions.